Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. It's game time, which means it's time to put these lineups together using the player pool that I've developed through this week. Just wanted to mention real quick before we move on, the player pool that I had last week actually had the players necessary to develop a lineup that could have scored more points than the eventual winner of the Millie Maker in Draftkings. With that being said, let's get started. Some reminders real quick. Don't be a victim of recency bias. Don't get caught up in what happened last week. There's an old adage that says you're not as good as you looked last week or as bad as you looked last week. Don't get caught up in that. The top scores last week, that doesn't mean necessarily they're going to be the top this week, and the lower scores, that doesn't mean they're going to be the lowest scoring. And don't be afraid of what's called FOMO. I heard this on a show that I was listening to a few weeks ago, and it makes a lot of sense. It's called fear of missing out, which means don't be afraid to not include a player because you're afraid everyone else is going to use them and get a lot of points. Don't be afraid of that. Look for value, consider ownership, make lineups that make sense. This is the player pool that I'm going to use. Whatever you decide to create for your contest, it's your money, your contest. If you like something different and you have a different angle or opinion, by all means use it. This is just the way that I do it, and I've been somewhat successful with it, and I learn a little bit more every time I do it. But I'm going to show you how I use these players to build lineups. At the beginning of this week, I used an optimizer that I had, and I just put a couple things in it, like I didn't want it over 40% exposure to any one player, and I just let it go based on early projections. And this is what it spit out. Quarterback, Mahomes. Running back, Drake from Miami. Running back, Thompson from Washington. Wide receiver, McLaren from Washington. Rams wide receiver, Cooper Kupp. Chargers wide receiver, Keenan Allen. Tight end, Travis Kelce. Running back, Carson from Seattle. And defensive special teams, Carolina. That's the very first run without looking at any players, considering any statistics. I just let it go. I said I didn't want more than 40% of one player in the lineups, and I just let it run its course, and that's what it spit out. My own personal early look, after I'd already looked at the Vegas totals, this is what I came up with. And I play a lot of different contests. I don't MME. I like to play a lot of different contests, a few different lineups. Once I get a couple that I like, I tend to keep those and move them around in different contests. This is what I came up with, and I will be using this just because it was my first thought, and I believe in that. Go with your gut. I had Mahomes at quarterback. Running back, I had McCaffrey. My next running back was Jacobs from Oakland. McLaren at wide receiver. Fuller at wide receiver. Galladay at wide receiver from Detroit. Kelce at tight end. Seattle's Disley in the flex position. It's kind of odd for me. I usually like to have a running back there. I like to have 3 running backs. I feel like the running back position is more consistent from week to week, and I target running backs that get a lot of touches. And the defense that I chose was the Broncos. They're $2,900. Now let's see if this research has changed any of this. It's time for us to put it all together. First, let's recap the player pool. The quarterbacks that I identified were Mahomes for $7,500, Goff for $6,300, Russell Wilson for $6,100, Case Keenum for $4,900, Jackson for $6,900, Watson for $6,400, Jones from the Giants $5,300, Rivers for $6,200, and I've added Stafford. Now, one thing about Stafford, and let me look here real quick. He's got a questionable tag, and I'm not sure. Stafford's hip injury isn't expected to impact his ability for Sunday's game against Kansas City. So he should be good to go. But definitely, I can't stress this enough. Make sure you check 90 minutes before game time tomorrow. The main slate starts at 1 o'clock. Make sure you look at things like the injury report and that those players are going to be in the games and they're not a late scratch or something like that. And a couple quarterbacks that out of that pool that I'm really interested in this week. I like Keenum because of the value, and the Giants' pass defense is one of the three worst. And I also like Rivers, his matchup in Miami, and Russell Wilson. And you always have to consider Mahomes. I think that goes without being said. But if I'm not going to spend all the way up to get Mahomes, then perhaps I can find some value in those others. I also like Jared Goff. His matchup with Tampa Bay is really intriguing. The Week 4 running backs are as follows. McCaffrey, 8,800. Eckler, 8,000. Mack from Indianapolis, 6,100. Fournette from Jacksonville, 6,000. Johnson from Detroit, 5,400. Henry from Tennessee, 6,300. Oakland's Josh Jacobs for 5,100. Seattle's Carson for 5,700. And I've decided to eliminate Kansas City's McCoy and Williams. They do have a good matchup, but you don't know who's going to get all the touches. And I don't want to use running backs that are involved in committees. So me personally, I'm removing them. If you want to use them when you're building lineups, there is a little bit of value there. McCoy's 5,600. Could possibly use him and hope that he gets the majority of the carries. And if they get down close, he'll be the one that punches it in. My Week 4 wide receivers are the following. Chargers, Allen at 7,600. Washington's McLaren. Remember, McLaren he got upgraded to probable, so that's a good sign. And he actually, let me take a quick look here while we're talking about him. He's 4,500, so let's go down here. 4,500. Oh, they still have him with a questionable tag. I seen something with the probable. McLaren should be able to play Sunday against the Giants. He's another one. If you're going to use him, make sure. The NFL has to release their final injury report 90 minutes before the game time. Remember, that's 11:30 tomorrow morning. Okay. Galladay from Detroit. Kirk from Arizona, 5,100. Fitzgerald from Arizona, 5,600. Watkins from Kansas City, 6,700. Shepard from the Giants, 5,800. I've removed T.Y. Hilton. He's been downgraded to doubtful. And his injury, I just don't want to take a chance. Even if he did play, goes out there, plays a couple plays, can't finish the game. And that's not a scenario where I have FOMO. I don't have any fear of missing out. So I'm going to remove him from my player pool. Quinn from Washington, huge savings at 3,000. It's just a matter if he gets the targets necessary to get value. Cooper Kupp from the Rams, 6,500. Hopkins from Houston, 7,700. Cleveland's Odell Beckham Jr. 7,300. And I've added Richardson from Washington, and I've also added Carolina's Moore for 5,600. The matchup for Carolina against Houston's pass defense is a good one, and I just think Moore is one that I should consider, especially at his price. The tight end position for Week 4 is as follows. Ingram at 5,700, Kelsey at 7,200, Waller at 5,200. That's one of my favorite ones. He's getting a lot of targets. Hawkinson from Detroit. He's another one that I like. He's 3,300, which is $3,900 less than Travis Kelce. I have removed Everett and Higbee. I talked about this in my tight end video yesterday. Everett's getting a lot of the work in between the 20s. Higbee's getting a lot of work in the red zone. So you don't really know who's going to get all the targets, and they don't get a lot of targets, so you're pretty much dependent on a touchdown for one of them. If I had to choose, I would probably go with Higbee due to the red zone targets. But for me, I'm going to remove them from my player pool. Olsen from Carolina, 4,200. Andrews from Baltimore, 5,000. Yeah, 5,000. Hooper from Atlanta, 4,300. Disley from Seattle, 3,600. And I've added Vernon Davis for 3,400. And Delaney Walker from Tennessee. I've added him as well. Defensive special teams, Rams at 3,500. Chargers at 3,800. Ravens at 3,200. Seattle at 3,300. Chicago at 3,400. The Colts at 3,100. And I've added the Patriots. If the Patriots take away John Brown, I thought about this last night. If they take away John Brown, I'm not sure what Buffalo's going to do to score. And New England's defense has been up to the task in the first 3 weeks. I know it's in Buffalo. Buffalo's going to have a lot of energy for this game, division game, Super Bowl champions coming to town. But I think it's not a good matchup for Brown either against Gilmore. So I'm adding the Patriots to the player pool. Now, some projected ownership numbers that I've found, and this varies from site to site, depending on which ones that you look at. I like to look at a few different sites and just kind of get a consensus of where the ownerships is going. This is what I found: the highest owned players in their positions. The quarterbacks are Mahomes, Wilson, and Watson. They're showing up the most for ownership. Running backs, McCaffrey is showing up in about 24% of the projected ownership. Eckler is right behind him at 22%, and Carson's at 17%. Wide receivers with high ownership are going to be Allen, Kupp, and Hopkins. Tight ends, the two of the usual two, Kelsey and Ingram at the top, and Waller from Oakland getting a lot of ownership. Defense, special teams, Chargers, Patriots, and Ravens. Now, using these players, I pre-built some lineups, and I'm going to show you one of the first lineups that I was able to build using just these players. And this, like I said, this is the way I do it. You can add players, subtract players. This is my core. If you follow or you play on Draftkings tomorrow and you see Cowboy Fan 215, that's me. And unless it's all early games or all 4 o'clock on the main slate, I can tell you I will be using these players. So my first lineup was Mahomes, running back, Johnson from Detroit, Fournette, Quinn, 3,000. Let's go down here and get Quinn. And I just want to show you, that it is possible using these players. Quinn, 3,000. Here he is. Galladay from Detroit, 5,900. I like Kenny Galladay a lot this week. I liked him last week. He let me down, but I'm not afraid to go back. Like I said, I don't get caught up in the recency bias or any of that. If anything, recency bias that if a player was high on last week and didn't produce, and now this week if a lot of people stay away from that player, I'm not afraid to go back to that player, especially if the matchup's there and the game script. And I also had Keenan Allen, third highest receiver price-wise. Tight end, I had Kelsey. And my flex position, I had another tight end, which is really not the way that I usually build, but the players that I used here as far as looking for value and getting the players that I wanted, I needed to go down and I didn't find a running back in that price range that I thought would be viable to put in that spot. And defense actually could go all the way up to the Chargers. And there you go. I've spent all the salary that's allowed, and that's a really good balanced lineup. I have Mahomes teamed up with Kelsey. I'm going to bring it back with Galladay from Detroit. It makes a lot of sense. Kind of spent down at the running back position this week. Fournette's getting a lot of touches for Jacksonville. Kerryon Johnson last week against the Chiefs, the running back Ingram had a really good game. Could see a scenario where Johnson put some fantasy points together in that game, and it's one of the highest. Well, it is the highest total on the board at 54. So there you go. You can screenshot that and use it. If you want to use it, go ahead. I'm going to use that. That is definitely one that I'm going to use. But here, I'm going to put another one together that I liked a lot. And this was manual built. I did the research and put it together myself. Mac. I like Keenum at quarterback. And I like Mac, who is, I thought Mac was 50. There he is. Marlon Mack, 6,100. My next running back, I used Eckler. So in this lineup, I actually spent up a little bit at the running back position, spent down a little bit on the wide receiver. So let's go down here to Richardson, who I believe was, there he is, 3,700. Richardson from Washington, teaming him up with Keenan. I also used McLaren from Washington, which he was he 4,500? I think, there he is. Now, I'm going to keep an eye on that. He's questionable, but they expect him to play. So I've got Keenum teamed up with two of his receivers. Next, I'm going to use the old man Fitzgerald. Murray has been going to Fitzgerald and Kirk a lot. And Fitzgerald's price, 5,600. If I wanted to, I could drop down to Kirk, who I believe is 5,100, but I like Fitzgerald in this spot. Tight end, I went with Waller. He's one of the top tight ends as far as targets. Pivoted off of Kelsey. If Kelsey gets all the ownership, maybe get myself a little bit of leverage in a game that Indianapolis should be able to put some points on the board. And if Oakland has to throw the ball around, you can see a scenario where Carr is going to try to get the ball to Waller. In my flex position, I had Christian McCaffrey, one of the top projected scorers this week. And my defense, I decided to go with the Ravens at home. I like this lineup a lot. I will be watching McLaren, but I will be playing this particular line. I like Keenum with McLaren. It's not really a game stack, but I could see in a game total 46 and a half. I could see a scenario where both these teams put some points on the board through the air because they're both facing defenses that are not good against the pass. Okay, one more, and I really like this one too. Now, all these players are in the pool that I've developed through the week. I've done the research. I know what I'm looking for. I've taken into consideration the game script, and these are, like I said, these are manual builds. So we got Jared Goff, running back. I'm going to use Josh Jacobs again. Bring that back with Mac again at 6,100. I think Mac's in a position to really smash this weekend. He's at home. If T.Y. Hilton's out, that would make them perhaps want to lean on the running game even more. And Mac's not sharing carries with anybody on Indianapolis. If he stays healthy, he's a really good pick this week. Wide receiver, Fuller from Houston. This is pivoting off of Hopkins, and he gets a lot of targets from Watson. My next receiver is Galladay. I like him. I like having a piece of that game, the highest scoring game. Next receiver, Cooper Kupp. He's getting a ton of targets, and on Draftkings PPR, you get 1 point for every target or every reception. That's really huge on their site. You want receivers that are going to get a lot of targets, and Cooper Kupp is one of those. Has a really good matchup against Tampa Bay this week too. Wide receiver or tight end, I'm sorry, Delaney Walker. Through the years, I've liked Walker when he's been able to stay healthy. Mariota likes to go to him. You see a situation, Atlanta putting some points on the board against Tennessee, and Mariota maybe having to check down some to Walker, and he throws it down the field to him as well. There's a note on him. I wanted to make sure he doesn't have an injury designation for Sunday's game, and so that's really good. It says for Sunday's game at Miami. He's not playing at Miami. He's at Atlanta. So I like him. He's in the Delaney Walker is he 3,600? Yeah, Walker was 4,800, and there's a lot below him. Or if you wanted to go up $400 and go back to Waller, you could do that. But I really like Walker in that position. My flex for this team is Hopkins from Houston. Another target monster. So I have some receivers here that get a ton of targets. And defensive special teams, I went back to the Broncos at home. So there you go. And I left $200. This is a nice balanced lineup using the players that I have. Goff teaming him up with Kupp, and some receivers there that receive a lot of targets. If I would get 30 targets 30 targets between them, and I broke that down in my wide receiver video, what targets are worth, per point, because you factor in all things that are relevant. But if I could get 30 between them, well, actually four, so I should definitely get at least 40 or 30 targets between Hopkins, Kupp, Galladay, and Fuller. It'd be really interesting. And I have Fuller and Hopkins teamed up. I could actually switch out Goff, and I could actually plug in Watson. That's another possibility. Watson with two of his receivers. The other way, I had Goff with one of his receivers. So there you go. There's some lineups. The player pool, like I said, look for the Cowboy Fan 215. I believe it's up here above my head. Take time to construct your lineups. Factor in the game script and ownership. Look for value. Don't have the fear of missing out. Don't get caught up in recency bias. Everybody that does a video or has a radio show has their own opinion. Go with what you think is best. If you want to use some of my players, that's fine. One of these lineups, that's fine. I'll be using one of them. So if we win, we'll be splitting. But build your lineup. It's your money. It's your contest, and have fun with it. I do like, as I mentioned, I like to play a variety of contests. And I play some head-to-head. I'll play some double-ups. I'll play some multiplayer. I'll play a few GPP. I will put an entry into the Millie Maker. Why not? I feel like I got just as good a chance as anyone else. The guy that won it last week put together a really nice lineup. He did use an optimizer in 150 mass multi-entry, and if you can do that, go for it. I mean, it gives you a better chance. But for me, this is how I do it, and I'm hoping that this research will help someone. I'll be rooting for you because, as I said, I'll have the same players, and I'll be coming back Monday to do a recap show. Even if I win the Millie Maker, I promise I'll be back to do the show, at least to brag. It'll be really good advertisement. But I'll be back, as I mentioned, to recap and take a look at the Monday night showdown. Good luck tomorrow. Make sure you look at the injury report at 11:30 tomorrow morning. Make sure there's no injuries, and then check it right. 12:30 or so, somebody's in game warm-ups and pulls something, can't be in the game. You don't want a zero. You're playing to win, and so consider all those things. And before I go, I'd just like to give you a reminder, if you'd please hit the subscribe button, to hit the like button, hit the notification bell, which that'll allow you to be notified when my videos drop. And you can drop any comments below. I'll answer them. If I get this going and I get enough subscribers, I'm thinking about doing like a Sunday show right before lock. But that's down the road some. But I will answer any questions. If you ask me some questions about a lineup or something that I think, I'll give you my opinion. And I'm not guaranteed that I have the perfect opinion, and I'm not guaranteeing that the players that I have in my pool are going to be winners every week. But they are based on facts, and I have done the research. So I did put a lot of time and effort into it. But with that being said, I don't hold you up any longer. Have fun. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. My name is Ty Patton. I'll talk to you again on Monday. Have a good time tomorrow. Take care.